TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Well, you know what? The first time I ever started with them, I actually jumped the rail in Hershey.
Oh.
Well, I actually live, 5 miles or 10 miles, whatever, from the Hershey Arena.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't planned. Somehow it just came about that that's where I'm going to start.
Huh.
So it was kind of bizarre. I mean, maybe they had it in the back of their mind, well, this is a good place to start. But if they did, they never divulged that to me.
Yeah.
As far as I know, it's just a coincidence. That's where we started. Although Vince is pretty bright. So I'm thinking, well, if he's from that area, stick him in then.
Yeah.
But nobody ever told me that for sure. So anyway, that's where I jumped in, and I did that pay-per-view later on.
Yeah.
So,
did you like that angle, debuting by jumping over the guardrail?
I did.
Yeah.
One thing I wish I'd have done myself, I wish I'd have just gone to a small territory and done like a few weeks in the ring, working in front of crowds every day for my own personal satisfaction before I went there and did that. I felt most of what I did in the ring was okay, but I just feel in the beginning some of it could have been brushed up because I was kind of just practicing with a couple of guys at home. We had a ring at home.
Oh, okay.
But I wish I'd actually gone somewhere and spent a few weeks doing matches every day.
Yeah.
I think things would have come off a little better. But I mean, for the most part, everything in the ring went pretty well.
Yeah. I was going to ask you if you did independence to warm up before you started up there.
Not a one.
Wow.
I mean, we had a ring. But when I say we practice, I mean, we're doing matches in the ring. Like, I wanted to get to the point where I was calling 15, 20-minute matches without talking about, discussing a thing. Just go in there and wrestle and do it. And, so mentally I was preparing myself for all that. And I was in the ring, on my own a couple hours a day doing stuff. So it's not like I wasn't doing anything.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume it was easier for somebody like you to get acceptance from the locker room since you probably knew a lot of the guys from Stampede and came up with them and that kind of thing.
When I, this is funny. Well, at the time, like I didn't, when I was in Japan, when I went over there, I had some problems in the States. So it's kind of bizarre to even say this, but I promised my family and my girlfriend I wouldn't get in any trouble over in Japan because I had some fights and stuff over here. So I'm like, okay, well, I get over to Japan. I'm there with Vader and Buzz Sawyer. Well, they were younger back then and they were just total assholes. So anyway, I sucked it up, didn't do anything. And plus I have a copy of my contract somewhere. It was in my contract that if I screwed up or got in any fights over there, they could send me home with half the amount of pay I was guaranteed.
Oh, wow.
Well, back then, I wanted the money and needed the money. It was the first place I had been. So anyway, I put up with these two and I just couldn't wait to get back to the States because I just wanted to pummel them.
Yeah.
So we get back to the States. Well, Buzz ran through the security checkpoint and threw his clothes in the garbage. So we didn't have to check in or anything like that and just ran. I never saw him again, but he fell over dead, cutting his grass or something. Well, good riddance, Buzz. But and then Vader, I actually went to Hershey that night. I hadn't seen him in 6 years or 7 years after I was out. I saw him in Japan, then I got over being sick, and I got my health back, was back training, and I actually went to Hershey in like 97, somewhere around there, just because I wanted to go up there. I went up there just to kick the shit out of him. That's the reason I went to Hershey. Yep.
Wow.
So I walked in, Bulldog was in there, Owen was in there. Well, the whole crew was there. And, Owen's like, what are you doing here? I said, oh, and you were in Japan with me. I said, well, this is the first time I felt healthy and Vader's in town. So I came up here to beat the shit out of them. And they just looked at me. So I said hi to the guys and stuff. And Vader came down the hall and I had my hair cut short. I had hair long back then.
Oh, okay.
And long story short, he came up and I told him why I was there. Well, after he knew I was serious. I mean, it's like I squared off and said I came here for one reason,
Yeah.
And he said, well, I don't know what happened back then. Well, he apologized to me twice.
Yeah.
I might sound like an idiot or a jerk saying this, but I really didn't want him to apologize because he and Buzz made life miserable for me for 6 weeks over there, and I wanted to beat the shit out of him bad.
Yeah.
So he apologized, and I looked like a total idiot at that point. If I start cracking somebody, that's just apologize twice in front of 20 men, in the locker room. So I'm like, this is brutal, I said, Owen, and Owen's like, the hell with it. He goes, you apologize, who cares anymore? And then Bulldog's like, why don't you come back in? Well, then Brian Pillman was in there too. And it's funny, everybody I'm naming are all my good friends and none of them are around anymore.
Yeah.
But anyway, they all put in a word. Brett put in a word for me, stuff like that. Well, then I went to another one of the shows in Bethlehem, I think it was, talked with a couple of guys in the office. And then I worked my way in shortly thereafter.
Yeah. Was it the whole thing with Buzz and Vader? Was it that they knew that you had that clause in your contract, so they knew that they could push you without retribution, or
I don't know. They were just pushing me,
Yeah.
and now I was 22 at the time,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, I've never let anybody. It's like I sucked it up because I had been in some fights here, and my attorney was having a fit. I said, he goes, no matter what you're doing, you got to stop getting in any trouble. And it wasn't trouble I had started. It was just from working in bars, just knocking people out.
yeah,
But, and then my girlfriend was having a fit. My mother was having a fit. So they're like, promise us you're not getting in any trouble while you're gone for 6.5 weeks.
yeah,
I'm like, okay, I promise. Cut me
Yeah.
a break here.
Yeah.
Well, after promising, I get over here with the two biggest jerks on the planet. Now, I will say this. Vader's changed. He's gotten older. He's matured. He was a pain in the ass back then. If he's a man, he'll say he was a pain in the ass back then. But he's changed. He's different, And he's like all the other guys. He kind of grew out of it, mature, stuff like that.
yeah,
And Buzz was just a total jerk. Don't know if he ever changed or not because I never saw him again.
Yeah.
I don't care if I ever did. If I did, I would have liked to have cracked him too. But anyway, I don't think they would have known that was in my clause. I think they were just used to ribbing new people. And I can take ribs, I can take jokes as good as the next guy, and I can give them out. But, they were pushing things way
Yeah.
too far. And it's like, when they know you're a new guy, well, they have their positions sewn up over there. Well, for one, you're worried about, am I ever going to be able to come back over here and wrestle again if I do something to these guys? I promised my family I'm not going to. It was just a pain in the butt for 6 weeks for me. And I couldn't wait to get back home, just as cold as that sounds. I just wanted to see those guys bad.
yeah. So it's like it took everything. I would imagine your willpower not to
It did.
do anything.
It did. And then a couple of other guys were like, why don't you? I'm like, I didn't want. Back then, it's like I didn't even want to tell people that. Well, it was in my contract, and
Yeah.
promised my family. It's like they're going to be like, oh yeah, but that's just the way it was. And anybody that knows me, I don't lie about anything like that. It was just this is the way it was.
Yeah.
So years ago, like in '85, I was living down in Florida. Just tired of my lifestyle, tired of working in bars. Just kind of realized it was going nowhere fast. I was trying to decide what I wanted to do, and I'm like, I don't know, it just hit me one day. I decided to go to wrestling school. So hitting around to some of my friends, I said, I think I'm just going to go to wrestling school. And I'm sick of this. Just 4 years of working in this bar scene, 50 hours a week isn't cutting it anymore.
Yeah.
So he goes, well, there's a wrestling school in Connecticut near my parents' house. I said, yeah, sure there is. I just thought the guy was busting my balls.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm telling you, there's a wrestling school down the street. Well, long story short, I flew up to Connecticut the next week, and that was in Milford, and that's where Tony Altimore had a school, and Dave Schultz. And I ended up going to the school that Tony Altimore was running. That's where Ted Arcidi was in there when I went there.
Oh, okay.
And that's the other guys. We had a pretty good crew at the time. Anyway, that's where I got started.
Oh, wow. Were you a fan before you got into the business?
Somewhat. I was when I was younger. At those years when I was in my later teens, like 19 and then 20, 21, stuff like that,
Yeah.
I wasn't as big a fan. I was just busy working and doing other things. But in my younger years, as a kid, I watched it more on TV.
Yeah. Was the training more difficult than you thought it would be?
I don't know. I expected it to be difficult. I don't know exactly what I expected, but it was difficult. We bumped our butts off for months. Just we trained about 3 hours a day. I flew up there for one reason, to go to wrestling school. So
Yeah.
I sound like I took days off, 6 days a week. I was in
Wow.
that ring 3 hours a day. That's all I did.
So you relocated specifically to go to the school?
Yep.
Wow.
I actually flew up there,
Huh.
bought a cheap car because I had two cars in Florida.
Yeah.
Bought a cheap car to go back and forth to the gym with, and when I got a chance or a break, I'd fly back to Florida to see my girlfriend and stuff like that. But I just flew up there for that reason. All I did was lift and wrestle.
Wow.
TitleMatchNetwork.com